And I'm highly confident that you'll see a handful of new deals over the next 2 weeks.
But you will see a cascade of new deals coming out in the near future.
But as long as we continue to make progress, I think you're going to see a lot more deals that are announced prior to that July 9th timeframe.
And as you get to July 9th, that number is only going to go higher. We're going to announce a whole bunch of deals over the next week or so.
But as always, there's going to be a flurry going into the final week as the pressure increases.
On trade, there's going to be quite a bit of news this week. And I think the headline of the news is that there are going to be deals that are finalized. Well, these tariffs are real if the president doesn't get a deal that he thinks is good enough. But, you know, conversations are ongoing, and we'll see where the dust settles.
I watched the show this morning. They were talking about, well, when's he going to make the deal? The deals are already made. The letters are the deals. The deals are made. There are no deals to make.
We're going to have a lot of deals, and Trump says the deal's already made. For those keeping score, I count 2, right? 1.5, 1 3/4. I mean, Charlotte, the fog of disinformation and bluster and spin, and whoever's writing Lutnick's talking points should either be fired or get a raise because they're so audacious, they're comical. But the damage and the prices, the pain feels like it's already come. What is this about at a substantive level at this point?
What is this about at a substantive level? I feel like that's a deeper question than we have time for. But on at least the top level, you have a president who either is treated by allies as a bully who's using these tariffs to extract concessions on a number of different areas, right? Economic areas, but also to try to extract, other things he wants from these countries. So either he's a bully and he's using the tariffs as a cudgel, or he's a buffoon. And I don't think that's a position that you really, as an American, want for your president to be in. I do think, you said that the pain has come. It started to show, but there's so much more that could happen should these tariffs actually go into effect, right? I mean, 30% by August 1st with the EU, our biggest trading partner. That's a colossal level. So if that were to go ahead and if the EU were to retaliate, it's preparing its retaliatory tariffs in case a deal isn't signed, that would have a very big economic impact. And I think, there are impacts that are kind of insidious as investment is chilled and you see companies waiting to allocate their resources because they don't know what's coming next. Part of why the effects of inflation have been relatively modest to date is because companies have gotten so good at managing their supply chains, and they were stockpiling goods earlier in the year in preparation for the scale of uncertainty. There's only so long that kind of strategy can continue to buffer Americans from higher prices. So I think you have started to see the effects of this, but there's so much more that could come.
John Heilemann, in honor of your last point, we have this graphic. This is from Fox News, of all places. This is Donald Trump's approval on inflation and Joe Biden's approval on inflation, separated by about 6 months. And I'm not great at math, but I think those numbers equal the same. Donald Trump not viewed any more favorably on the topic of inflation, which he, to your point, rode to victory. For all the other things in the news cycle, this feels like the biggest flashing red for Republicans in the midterms.
Yeah, I think that's right, Nicole. And look, we did, Charlotte was talking about how we do live in this, there's this alternative reality that's conveyed by the stock market, where the market has not done what a lot of people thought it would do around these tariff policies. It increasingly, Trump makes announcements, he makes threats, he levies tariffs, then retracts them. It's all over the map. And they now, even with inflation, they see the inflation number come in as they did yesterday, today, and sort of says, and they say, okay, we're not going to react the way you think we're going to react. We're just going to let it ride because Trump, they've kind of started to buy this notion that just like Taco was their view about a lot of the Trump trade policies, they look at the inflation number and they say, well, this will be great because it'll just force the Fed's hand. The Fed will then cut interest rates, and that'll solve the problem, or raise interest rates, I should say. That they'll be able to kind of, this one way or the other, we're going to navigate our way through this situation. And I just look at it and say that the underlying realities are the things that the Republicans have to look at with fear because they have passed a budget, a big, beautiful bill. They passed a giant bill that is massively inflationary, that's going to push the deficit off the cliff, where the world markets are looking at America as not a safe investment anymore, and where Donald Trump is still flirting with the notion that he might try to kick Jerome Powell out as Fed chairman. And you know in his heart, Trump thinks he should be in charge of the Fed. That, I think, is game over for the American economy if Trump were to make a move on Powell. And you know he wants to, Nicole. You know he wants to make that move. He's been hinting at it for months. And I think if I'm a Republican right now, I'm looking at the real economy and where it could be a year from now. And there's not a single forecaster I know who looks with confidence to a year from now and says things are going to be great in terms of prices, in terms of stagnation, in terms of inflation. More often they say things like stagflation than they think a well-controlled, happy boom. And if I'm a Republican, that's what I'm worried about when it comes to the midterms. Stagflation.
Well, if I was a Republican, I'd be worried about abdicating all of my responsibilities under the law when it came to tariffs and trade. I mean, I think there's a judge right now whose position is that they're all illegal.
I agree with that, Nicole. It's really remarkable. I mean, Congress, the people who are in Congress are the only people in the world who seem to have made the calculation that keeping their job requires them not to do it. I mean, they're just handing over power and not doing what they're authorized to do. This case that you mentioned is going to go into oral arguments later this month. And even the Cato Institute, which is a conservative think tank, filed a brief challenging the Trump administration's authority to set these tariffs for this very reason, that it is not in its power to set duties. I will say The Economist did a poll over the weekend with YouGov, its partner, that showed that even Republicans don't want higher tariffs. Only 40% of Republicans favor raising tariffs. So this is really unpopular across the board.